Multilingual Redditors, what is your they didn't realize I spoke their language story? I'm American, but can read and speak Russian on an intermediate level. A few years ago while visiting St. Petersburg, I was buying tickets for the hydrofoil to Peter. All the signs at the ticket booth were in Russian, and I could read the ticket prices. The ticket agent assumed I didn't know Russian, and tried to tell me the ticket cost 3 times more than the stated price. I looked her right in the eye and said in Russian, "I see on the board here that the ticket I want is X rubles." Her jaw dropped, and the ticket agent sitting next to her started laughing her ass off. I've heard this is pretty common in Russia. You have your locals' prices and your tourists' prices. Said something like you need to be careful when talking shit about someone in your native language. There might always be someone who understands you in German. While I was in Italy, a woman who was walking by responded like me, for example. The people at the Chinese food place on my campus spoke Chinese to the door exchange students, but even though I spoke Chinese, one just always spoke English to them since I have an accent when I speak Chinese. But one day I got all meat no rice since I had a rice maker at home, and when I was paying the lady says to the person beside her, "Fat ass wants meat no rice," and I responded in Chinese, "Actually I have rice at home." They didn't charge me for the order and started giving me a bit extra whenever I go there. Me and my friend were sharing a cab with 2 girls we didn't know. Just decided to share a taxi with them, because it was a long way and we wanted to save some money. They started speaking Swedish, not knowing my friend is also Finnish Swede. Her mother language is Swedish. She has been in Swedish school, but is Finn and speaks Finnish fluently. I understand Swedish but I was too drunk to care. Suddenly she texts me, "They're planning to leave us with the bill." I texted that we should tell the driver, so my friend just said, "These girls will pay half of this before they leave." He got the hint and didn't open the doors before they paid. I lived in South Korea for 3 years, but I never learned too much of the language. A friend of mine is 100 Korean but is very tall and was educated in America and New Zealand, so she has an American accent. Her co-teachers at her school all assumed she couldn't speak Korean, so they would talk shit about her constantly while she would listen on and feel terrible. She said nothing for a whole year until she had to speak at the end of year ceremony. The school offered her someone to translate but she refused, and in front of 800 or so students and faculty members she delivered her address in perfect Korean. She subtly called out the co-workers that had spent an entire year calling her a foreign pig. Apparently one started crying from the shame of it. I wish I had got to see that. When I started working at McDonald's at 16, none of the other employees realized I could speak a fair amount of Spanish. A few of my co-workers would talk crap about me in Spanish and I pretended for a few weeks that I didn't know what they were saying. Then one day a manager told me she was worth me than me because she was bilingual. So I told her in Spanish that I was actually trilingual. The looks on their faces when they realized I spoke Spanish all along was priceless. I'm Swiss and Peruvian and live in Peru, so I don't look at all like a Swiss guy. There were 2 Swiss girls sitting behind me on a bus talking about Latino guys. Then one of them asked the other if she found me attractive. I turned around and said that I would love to know that too. The look of confusion and shame was priceless. Then we just all laughed. Now I've got 2 new friends. Edit. They were speaking Swiss German edit too. They both later confessed that they found me attractive. Was in Germany, and a middle school teacher asked me to come in as a guest for one of her English classes. The teacher introduced me. I said hello and that I was from the US and happy to be in their class. The teacher said, "So do you have any questions in English for an American? What do you think an American is like?" One of the kids near the front says in German, kind of under his breath but definitely loud enough that most of the class can hear, "Fat and stupid." The kids laugh. The teacher turns bright red. I don't know what to do, so I just say, "Of course, many Americans can speak German in German." The kid almost shit himself. He looked like a baby deer that had wandered on stage at a Beyoncé concert. I thought he was just being a dick and had intended me to understand what he was saying. Apparently though he actually hadn't thought through that an American in Germany in their language class might actually speak their language. I was shopping with friends for clothes and these 2 ladies that worked at the store were outside of my fitting room speaking in Spanish. They kept criticizing me for taking so long to try on clothes and referred to me as dumb gringo and jokingly asked me if I needed any assistance in English. They didn't realize I was Hispanic until I came out of the room and responded in Spanish that no, I didn't need their help. They got so red. Edit. Somehow it's not clear to people that I responded no, I don't need your help rather than just no. While I'm Spanish, I don't quite look like the stereotypical Spaniard, light skin color, blondie-ish, green eyes. When I was living in London, one got into several situations like that. The top one was on the tube back home. I think there was a football game, Chelsea-Barcelona, and this couple was going to the stadium and I was standing just beside them. Tube had a hard stop and I accidentally fell a bit over one of them. I apologized in English as I didn't realize they were Spaniards too. They started talking to each other saying this fucking fat cunt nearly smashed in the ground and things of the sort for almost 5 minutes. When they left the tube and he looked at me one last time laughing, I told him in perfect Spanish, enjoy the game, you little piece of shit. His face going pale as the doors were closing was enough satisfaction for a week. Not me, but my stepmother. She grew up in Japan and speaks fluent Japanese. She looks Italian and white. She has an olive skin tone, and since she is only a quarter Japanese, she doesn't look like she is from any East Asian-speaking country. One day her and some friends went to get their nails, both hands and feet, done at a salon for some girl time. The ladies who were doing the work were speaking fluent Japanese and were mostly gossiping about men and other things until they got to the feet part of said procedure. My stepmother's friend is a little overweight, and she doesn't have runway model style of feet. Well, the ladies who work at the salon are just starting to make fun of her in Japanese, laughing and giggling, enjoying themselves in someone else's misfortune and looks. My stepmother said she let this go on for too long. It was about 5 minutes of them talking shit before my stepmother replied in Japanese. Her comment to them, I didn't realize that we needed to look like princesses to get service here. Something along those lines. The ladies stopped, and looked at my stepmother with extreme guilt. They apologized in English and were silent the remainder of the time my stepmother and her friends were there. When I was stationed in Korea, I was getting a haircut and the hairdresser had like an assistant or a new person helping her get me seated and prepared. She says to the main girl, he looks like a baby. I have a baby face and was like 22 at the time. I responded in Korean with, I look like a baby? She was really startled and embarrassed and noped out of there for the rest of the haircut. The main hairdresser took advantage of being able to talk with me in Korean, though. I'm Brazilian and was flying to Rio from Atlanta. There were these two very attractive girls with their mother speaking English very fluently, and one of them had their seat right next to mine. We exchanged some courtesy in English as I just assumed they were American, and so did they. They were Brazilian Americans and so did not have an accent, and I started speaking English from a young age, so as long as I don't talk too much I can go unnoticed. So they start putting their carry-on luggage in the bin overhead and the mother says to her daughters, in Portuguese, poor thing, he thinks I'll let one of you sit next to him. So I just turn to her and say, in Portuguese, don't worry, ma'am, I'm just being polite. I do have a girlfriend and it'll be a pleasure to share this flight with you. She just went, oh, and then she sat there in silence for the whole flight. So I don't speak Spanish fluently, but I understand it just fine. I used to sell cars in Houston, and as you can imagine, we had a lot of bilingual Spanish speakers come to buy cars from us. They never asked if my super clean-cut white guy self spoke Spanish, so I never told them I did. It was fun to have a couple that would speak English to me and Spanish to each other. They would literally tell each other everything, like how much they wanted to pay and their negotiating tactics. They would say things like, if he offers to take $500 off, let's do it, but I'm going to ask for $1,000. So once they said yes, inevitability one would ask the other a product question in Spanish and I'd jump in and answer in English. The looks on their faces when they have that aha moment were priceless. Edit. Side note, I used my powers for good too. Like me, only the other way around. Many Spanish speakers understand English just fine but don't speak it well. I've done entire car deals where I spoke English and they spoke Spanish with no issues and they became happy customers. Thank you a lot for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel.